In the early hours of an August morning in 2014, a young woman walked into a parking garage with someone she barely knew from high school. She was never seen alive again. What began as a night out with old friends ended in a tragedy that would haunt North Texas for years, exposing how quickly trust can turn deadly when placed in the wrong hands. As you watch this story unfold, consider how often we make split-second decisions about who to trust in vulnerable moments. If this case moves you, please subscribe and share this video to help ensure stories like Christina's are never forgotten. 23-year-old Christina Morris had everything ahead of her. Born and raised in Plano, she'd grown into a vibrant young woman with a magnetic personality that drew people in. Those who knew her described someone impossibly warm, the type of person who lit up every room she entered.
And can you start by telling us about Christina? You know, we see what we've seen on the news. Tell us about Christina.
Amazing.
Christina is just life. I mean, she is full of energy, she's full of spark and attitude and love and care, and she's just a joy. Not that she doesn't have an ornery side, but you know, Christina's just life.
Her childhood was filled with love from both her parents despite their divorce when she was very young. Her father Mark raised her alongside her stepmother Anna and siblings, while she maintained a close bond with her mother Johnny, who called Christina the love of her life. When her mother remarried, Christina embraced her stepfather Ronnie, saying it felt like having two mothers and two fathers. Family meant everything to her. After earning her marketing degree from the University of Texas at Dallas, Christina landed a position with an online dating company. She'd just received exciting news about moving into their photography department, a role that perfectly aligned with her passion for design and visual storytelling. By summer 2014, she'd moved to Fort Worth to live with her boyfriend, Hunter Foster, someone she'd known since 7th grade. Their relationship had weathered the challenges of long distance when Hunter pursued modeling and acting in New York, but now they were trying to build a life together. It wasn't easy. Hunter was between jobs and partying frequently, while Christina carried the financial weight of supporting them both. The pressure was mounting, and cracks were beginning to show. Labor Day weekend arrived, with the promise of celebration and time away from mounting tensions. Friday, August 29th, started with an argument between Christina and Hunter, the latest in an increasingly common pattern. Frustrated and needing space, Christina called her friend Taylor from her car, pouring out her worries about their future together. What did their relationship really look like long-term? Could they make it work? Taylor helped calm her nerves, and Christina decided she wouldn't let the stress ruin her night. She took a selfie in her car, determined to enjoy an evening with old friends from high school. The 45-minute drive from Fort Worth to Plano gave her time to shift gears emotionally. The reunion started at an apartment belonging to Paulina Petrosky at a complex called The Shops at Legacy, an upscale development featuring restaurants, bars, shops, and residential spaces. Around 11 that night, the group moved to nearby bars. First Henry's Tavern, then Scruffy Duff's. Surveillance cameras captured Christina walking down the street at 11:30 with Paulina and two others, Sabrina Boss and Enrique Arochi. Everyone seemed relaxed, enjoying the kind of carefree night that marks the end of summer. Christina remained relatively sober compared to others at the gathering, mindful that she might need to drive home. Her mood fluctuated throughout the evening, the earlier argument with Hunter still weighing on her mind. After last call, the group returned to Paulina's apartment with several other former classmates. Just after 2 a.m, Christina texted Hunter, asking him to come pick her up. She'd misplaced her car keys and wanted to see him, hoping they could talk things through. But Hunter was out drinking with his own friends in downtown Dallas and didn't see her messages. Christina sent several more texts, growing increasingly upset that he wasn't responding. For a brief moment, she considered staying overnight at Paulina's, but when she finally located her keys, she decided to drive home anyway. Her phone battery was dying, showing just a sliver of red. She sent one final message to Hunter expressing her frustration and apologizing, telling him her phone was about to die. Then she left Paulina's apartment and started walking toward her car. It was just before 4 a.m, and the night was essentially over for everyone. As dawn approached and hangovers set in, friends began checking on each other through text messages. No one could reach Christina. Her phone went straight to voicemail. She had a work shift scheduled that Saturday, so maybe she was sleeping or getting ready. But Christina never showed up for work. 2 more shifts came and went with no sign of her. Friends contacted her mother, Johnny, who felt a sickening dread she'd never experienced before. She called Hunter, who didn't answer. Then Christina's father, Mark, who picked up but knew nothing. On the evening of September 2nd, 3 days after anyone had seen or heard from her, Mark Morris filed a missing person report with Plano police. Detectives went to Paulina's apartment and learned where Christina had parked her car that night. When they arrived at the parking garage, they found her vehicle still sitting in its space on the first floor, locked and undisturbed. Mark and Anna arrived around midnight and opened it up. Christina's phone and purse were gone, but there were no signs of a struggle near the car. The doors hadn't been forced open. Nothing appeared dropped on the ground. She clearly never reached her vehicle that morning. Something had happened between Paulina's apartment and the parking spot. Paulina told investigators that Christina had left with Enrique Orochi, though she couldn't say what happened after they walked out the door. When asked about Enrique, Paulina admitted knowing very little. She'd only met him a couple months earlier. They'd gone to Allen High School together but never really talked. He was just a familiar face, which is why she'd invited him to the reunion. Detectives called Enrique, who said he wanted to help however he could. Unfortunately, his memory of that night was clouded.
Hello?
Hi, Enrique. This is Detective Kathy Stam of Plano Police Department. What time do you get off work?
I'll be leaving here soon. I'm going to finish up a couple things.
Okay. I wanted to see if I could get you to come by so we could talk to you about Christina. Obviously, everybody's getting very concerned.
Right.
Still hasn't shown up. So,
I want to help.
you said that you were leaving at the same time, same time as Christina, and you guys walked over to where your vehicles were parked. Is that right?
We walked separate ways. We walked until the end of the apartment complex, and after that, we just split up because I went to a different parking lot that she was.
Okay. I hope you can get away pretty quick. It's get pretty serious, and we'd like to try to find her.
I'm going to click out here soon, and I'll head over there.
Okay. Thank you so much.
He estimated he'd consumed 10 shots, 5 or 6 beers, some Adderall, and marijuana, at least as much as he could remember. He said he'd barely spoken with Christina during the evening. When mixing substances like that, he sometimes blacked out and lost chunks of time. According to his account, they'd left the apartment together, but separated once they reached the end of the complex, each heading toward their cars in different directions. Investigators needed to eliminate Hunter as a suspect, especially given his odd behavior. He hadn't tried contacting Christina or reported her missing, which seemed unusual for a boyfriend. When questioned, Hunter explained that when she didn't come home, he assumed she'd stayed with her parents or possibly been arrested for driving under the influence. He'd lost his phone while out that night, which explained why he'd been unreachable. He admitted being distracted with other things. Phone records showed someone had called Hunter from Enrique's phone at 10 minutes to 4 that morning, likely Christina trying to reach him. 2 text messages followed minutes later. When detectives asked to examine Hunter's phone, he refused, saying he felt uncomfortable handing it over. Given the circumstances, this struck investigators as peculiar, but they couldn't force the issue. Calls to his friends confirmed his whereabouts throughout the night, and cell tower data along with bank records verified he'd been nowhere near Plano. His alibi was solid. Later, it emerged that Hunter had sold drugs to an undercover federal officer in downtown Dallas that night, which explained his reluctance about the phone. That drug transaction would actually become part of his alibi. Investigators circled back to the party guests, and one name kept surfacing: Enrique Arrochi. Even people at the gathering thought it strange to hear his name connected to Christina. He'd barely acknowledged her that night, far more focused on another guest, Sabrina Boss. Things had gotten awkward when Enrique refused to move from his seat because he wanted to sit next to Sabrina, becoming visibly angry when she didn't reciprocate his interest. Eventually, Sabrina went to sleep in the spare bedroom. Minutes later, Enrique followed her in, announcing he was just going to leave. He started preparing to go, tagging along with Christina, who was also heading out. A friend of Christina's named Steven had called her about 10 minutes after she and Enrique left, checking if she'd made it to her car safely. She told him they were almost there and would text when she arrived. 5 minutes later, Steven sent another message asking if she'd gotten there, but received no reply. The messages were now showing as green bubbles, indicating her phone had lost service or died. Surveillance footage confirmed what Steven suspected. Cameras had captured both Enrique and Christina walking together, first near a bank heading toward the parking area, then entering the parking garage itself. The footage didn't suggest any visible distress. Christina appeared to be walking willingly, sometimes even trailing slightly behind him. There was no obvious sign of coercion or struggle. The cameras inside the garage only activated with motion, and unfortunately nothing else was recorded until 3 minutes later when another camera showed Enrique's car pulling out of the structure. Christina's vehicle never moved. She never left on foot either. The only logical conclusion was that she'd left in someone else's car, and the only other vehicle captured leaving around that time belonged to an Uber driver whose passenger was quickly accounted for and eliminated. When shown this footage, Enrique suddenly seemed surprised and hesitant. He'd told investigators a completely different story, claiming they'd parked in separate areas and entered through different entrances. Now confronted with video evidence, he changed his account. They had indeed walked to their cars together, he admitted. Perhaps during the night he'd moved his vehicle and forgotten, given how intoxicated he'd been. But he insisted Christina had gone to her car and he'd gone to his, then they'd separated. Investigators had no footage of her entering his vehicle, no physical evidence at the scene, and no clear motive. When they asked to search his car, Enrique said he needed it available for a business meeting the following day. Detectives noticed scratches and bruises covering Enrique's body. His knuckles were bloodied. There appeared to be a bite mark on his arm. He explained these came from working on his car. A tire had fallen on him, bruising his arm, and in a rage he'd punched his vehicle, leaving a dent in the side. Later, he changed this story, saying he'd been in a fight, but declining to specify with whom. When he finally allowed them to examine his vehicle, it was clear the car had been recently vacuumed and thoroughly cleaned. They could see the dent he referenced, but without a proper warrant, they couldn't conduct a deeper forensic examination. Enrique worked as a manager at a Sprint store in Allen and had a shift starting at 8 that Saturday morning, just 4 hours after being seen with Christina. His co-worker reported he'd arrived 3 hours late and looked terrible when he finally showed up. He walked with a limp, complained about his ribs hurting, and seemed completely out of sorts all day. The reason for his tardiness became clear through surveillance footage from a car wash, showing Enrique staring at his trunk for an extended period before opening it and scrubbing everything inside with intense focus. 5 days into the search, helicopters and drones swept the Plano area, Despite Christina's family distributing flyers to anyone who would take them and a reward growing to $25,000, no useful information materialized. Their best hope rested with phone data analysis. Once the results came in, they painted a damning picture. From the moment they entered the parking garage, Christina and Enrique's phones had been pinging the same cell towers. At nearly 5 in the morning, more than an hour after the surveillance footage, both phones were still together. Christina's phone then died, but Enrique's continued pinging towers for another 30 minutes before reaching his house. He'd taken an hour-and-a-half drive in total, far longer than the direct route home would require. Despite mounting evidence, Enrique stuck to his story and took his claims to the media.
I'm innocent. I didn't do anything to Christina Morris.
He insisted investigators had made false statements and hurt their own investigation. He maintained his innocence, claiming he'd simply forgotten where he'd parked and had a poor sense of direction. Regarding the damage to his car and his injuries, he repeated the story about working on his vehicle, becoming frustrated, and taking his anger out on the car itself. When asked about looking rough the day after Christina disappeared, he dismissed his co-workers' observations. He characterized himself as one of the nicest people anyone could meet, saying he had nothing to do with what happened to Christina. He prayed for her family daily, kneeling in church, asking God to help them find her so the ordeal could end. In early November, Plano police officially named Enrique as a suspect, though initially not for hurting Christina, but for interfering with their investigation. With a warrant finally secured, forensic examination of his car revealed what they needed. Christina's DNA was found inside the trunk in multiple locations, such substantial amounts that transfer contamination was impossible. This could only have come from blood or saliva. The statistical probability of the DNA belonging to anyone else was effectively zero. In December 2014, Enrique Orochi was arrested and charged with aggravated kidnapping. Without Christina's body or knowledge of how she died, kidnapping was the strongest charge prosecutors could bring. A grand jury indicted him on aggravated kidnapping charges along with 4 counts of sexual assault of a child related to a relationship with a 16-year-old girl when he was 22. Those charges were later dismissed. But the grand jury believed Enrique had intended to inflict bodily injury, sexually abuse, and terrorize Christina by abducting her and holding her somewhere she wouldn't likely be found. He pleaded not guilty. The prosecutor called it the hardest case of his career. The trial finally began in September 2016, nearly 2 years after Christina vanished. Enrique chose not to testify. Prosecutors presented 2 theories about what happened. Both stemmed from the belief that Enrique had made unwanted advances toward Christina, possibly triggered by Sabrina's rejection minutes before leaving the party. The first theory suggested he'd propositioned Christina as they approached their cars. When she refused, he'd attacked her in a drunken rage, forced her into his trunk, and driven away. The dent on his car, which he claimed came from punching it, might have resulted from a violent struggle. The marks on his knuckles came from hitting her, not the vehicle. The second theory, which investigators found more plausible given the 3-minute window between entering and exiting the garage, was that he'd offered to drive Christina back to Fort Worth. She'd gotten into his car willingly. During the drive, either she realized he was heading the wrong direction and understood she was in danger, or he made advances she rejected, or both. When she tried to escape, they fought violently, and he forced her into the trunk. Given his injuries, a serious physical altercation had clearly occurred. She was likely dying or already dead at that point. Christina's father said his daughter was terrified of the dark and extremely claustrophobic. The thought of her trapped in that position, scared and alone, fearing for her life, was unbearable. In a cruel twist, she probably would have felt comforted having Enrique walk to her car with her, given her fear was so severe she normally slept with the lights on. Hunter Foster, who'd now been cleared but was serving time in federal prison after pleading guilty to conspiracy to distribute ecstasy, took the stand through an immunity agreement. He admitted making terrible choices and handling everything poorly after she disappeared. Instead of searching for her, he'd continued partying with friends. But he had nothing to do with what happened to her and was devastated by the entire situation. The surveillance footage, DNA evidence, and phone data presented a compelling case. One detective testified about finding numerous images and videos on Enrique's phone depicting women being raped, tied up, mutilated, and tortured. Defense attorneys argued that processing both vehicles at the same lab created contamination risk, that no footage showed Christina entering his car, and that cell tower pings weren't always completely accurate. After nearly 2 days of deliberation, totaling 17 hours, the jury returned their verdict: guilty.
Life in prison. That is the sentence handed down today by the judge to Enrique Orochi.
It took Judge Mark Rush only a matter of minutes to hand down the maximum, and that being a life sentence. Now, in all, five members of Christina's family spoke directly to 26-year-old Enrique Orochi as part of the victim's impact statements. Now, Orochi appeared dismissive, looking away and rocking back and forth in his chair. Several times, Orochi appeared to smirk as family members spoke. That did not go unnoticed by family members, who made it clear to Orochi that while he spends the rest of his life in prison, their search for Christina will go on.
He needs to tell the truth for once in his life. That's what I mean by do the right thing. Tell me where Christina is, because you know where she is.
He has no feeling about what he did. It doesn't bother him a bit. Even the sentence didn't bother him. I hope it bothers him when he gets there, and I hope he gets what's coming to him.
Now, no one from Orochi's family appeared to be in the courtroom for the sentencing. Now, this life sentence means that he must serve at least 30 years in prison before he's even eligible for parole.
Despite the conviction, it didn't answer their biggest question: where was Christina? Enrique later appealed his sentence and requested a new trial, but both were denied. From prison, he gave an interview apologizing to the Morris family while maintaining he couldn't help them. He and his family prayed constantly for them and Christina's well-being. He declined discussing what happened after entering the parking garage, suggesting the DNA could have been planted or contaminated. He called the case circumstantial and insisted police should have focused more on Hunter. He claimed to have faith that God knew when he'd be released. Christina's family responded that they'd keep fighting back just as hard. Christina's family spent every day searching for her. Mark often went out alone regardless of weather, working methodically through vast stretches of wilderness. Her mother, Johnny, moved across the state, giving up her job to make searching her full-time occupation. Despite police believing Christina was dead, her family held on to hope she might be alive and held captive somewhere. Johnny continued leaving voicemails, writing daily letters, reaching out on Facebook, documenting everything her daughter was missing back home. 4 years after Christina vanished, and 2 years after Enrique's sentencing, in March 2018, investigators returned to an area they'd previously searched. The region near Anna, Texas, was being developed with new construction, and workers digging in the area made a grim discovery. A construction worker found a human skull alongside skeletal remains and some clothing items. The remains were positively identified as 23-year-old Christina Morris. After more than 3 years, the search had finally ended. Because of how long she'd been there, determining her cause of death proved impossible. Despite finding her body, no additional murder charges were filed against Enrique. Legal experts explained that charging him with capital murder would require another kidnapping conviction, but double jeopardy rules prevented trying him for the same kidnapping again. He was already serving life, and nothing would extend his sentence even if he were convicted of murder. The pandemic further delayed any potential proceedings, pushing everything back significantly. Christina's mother said she knew her daughter would be proud of them for never giving up. Now they could finally bring her home. They had a place to go be with her and talk to her, though this wasn't the ending they'd wanted. There was some measure of peace in having her back. Christina's sister Sarah captured the family's sentiment perfectly when she said they never wanted closure, even if such a thing existed. They only wanted Christina. Today, Enrique Arochi remains imprisoned at the maximum security French M. Robertson unit in Abilene, Texas. According to Department of Corrections records, he will become eligible for parole on the 12th of December 2044. He has never admitted to anything, so what happened in those early morning hours remains shrouded in darkness.